What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Chuds BBQ. My name is Bradley Robinson, and today I'm going to show you how I made this beautiful, delicious, tender, juicy, direct heat brisket. Coming up! Typically when we're talking about hill country or direct heat style barbecue, we're talking about chicken, ribs, pork steaks. But when it comes to brisket, it really is best on an offset with a little bit less intense of a heat, that low and slow, nice convective smoke. But that being said, everything I've thrown at the Mini ChudBox so far has been absolutely fantastic. So, that's right folks, today we're going to be cooking a direct heat brisket and it is going to be delicious. This is a brisket. I picked this up at my local HEB. It's about 13 pounds and is USDA prime. First things first, let's get this brisket trimmed up, starting with this hard decal fat on the back. A lot of times you can just kind of peel it away. It wants to separate naturally. But getting in there with just the tip, we're gonna take that right on out of there. You can hear it seaming out too, because we don't want all that on our brisket. While I'm back here, I'll clean up all of this extra fat and silver skin, as well as taking this sharp edge off. Because, you know, anything that's too thin will get crispy, and those crispy bits will snag on the serration of your knife. Next up, we're gonna take care of some of this fat on this side while we're back here. Don't wanna lose too much meat, but this will just help us get a better idea of how much fat is on the flat once we flip this over. As for this back piece right here, there's this muscle right on top, but I know it's on top of this fat cap, and we wanna get rid of some of this fat. So this back piece is coming off. Gonna round it out a little bit. As you can see, once we take it off, we're still left with fat cap, so gotta go. Just rounding everything off, making it aerodynamic. And that is looking pretty good to me for the backside. I could spend some more time getting the silver skin off, but I don't feel like it, and especially how we're cooking it today, I don't think it's gonna be a problem. As for the top here, first thing we're gonna do is take care of this fat right at the end of the point where the point meets the flat. This one's not too bad, but there's always a big chunk of fat right there. That out of there. Whoops, scalped it a bit, not a problem. And now we're gonna round off this top point because that is not gonna cook up very well. As for this top fat, I'm gonna leave a little extra on than I normally would, and that's just because the fat's gonna be taking a pretty significant amount of heat, so I kinda wanna leave a little extra on there to help protect the brisket. And if you want to see me trim other briskets, you can check out my How to Trim a Brisket episode. You can check out the pastrami episode. Because the only way to get good at trimming a brisket is to do it a lot of times. But I know that's not really practical because it's such an expensive big piece of meat. So, second best bet is just watch me do it a bunch of times. Chud scrape. All right, now we're just gonna give this thing some shape, take care of this thinner end, take care of this big piece of lean right here that doesn't really have much of a fat cap on it. That's not gonna be too good. So I'm gonna do the old swoop and shape. And there we have it. Good looking brisket, except for right there. Perfect amount of fat on there all the way across. Nicely shaped, aerodynamic, which I guess really isn't as important because we're not cooking on a convective cooker today, but either way, this thing is looking like it's ready to hit the chud box. Well, we went for our charcoal to light. Let's go ahead and get our rub made up. Starting with 1 part kosher salt, 2 parts 16 mesh black pepper, and you know what? I'm feeling a little frisky, so let's go in with a 1/2 part of garlic powder as well. That's granulated garlic, I should say. Oh yeah, get it all mixed up real nice. You know the drill from here, folks. Just gonna get a nice heavy coating on there. No need for a slather or anything like that, as long as you don't forget the sides. Just a nice heavy coating, and that is looking just about perfect to me. The brisket is on the cooker, and one thing I wanted to mention is that this is a direct heat barbecue cook, as opposed to cooking a brisket on a grill or a ceramic grill or something like that. On those kind of cookers, people generally put the coals off to one side or put a baffle plate in the way, and that's basically just trying to mimic the effects of an offset smoker. But what we're going for today is that direct heat barbecue where it's directly above the coals, meaning we're gonna get the full force of that heat, giving us a really nice bark, a really nice crust, but most importantly, all the fats and juices that are gonna render out during this cook are gonna drip onto the coals, creating that super flavorful smoke and that distinct flavor from direct heat barbecue. So that being said, this brisket went on fat side down, which is something that I've never done before. But we're gonna have to be flipping this thing periodically throughout the cook to make sure nothing dries out and make sure it cooks evenly. And starting with the fat side down is a good idea because once it gets up in temperature, it's gonna start rendering and dripping a lot. So if we flipped it later in the cook, we'd have a much higher chance for a grease fire. But that being said, we're gonna be rocking right around 275, maybe 250, maybe 300 degrees throughout this entire cook. It's gonna be a nice, hot and fast brisket cook, and we'll check back in a little bit. When it comes to maintaining temps on a mini ChudBox, the easiest thing for me is to start out with the right amount of charcoal. For this cooker, 1 chimney of charcoal gets me up to 300 degrees and holds it there for about 2.5, maybe 3 hours. If it gets too hot, the best thing to do is just open the door. It's such a big door, it's gonna let in plenty of airflow and easily drop it down 20, 30 degrees. And then it's got the notch system here, so you can really fine tune it. Typically with direct heat cookers like this, you'll see a lot of people using burn barrels where they're burning full wood logs down into coals and then they can just shovel it in or shovel it out if it gets too hot. And that's the easiest way to go about it, but not very practical for the backyard. You can use your charcoal chimney as a burn barrel, maybe light half a chimney up, throw it in periodically. But what I like to do is just throw charcoal in periodically throughout the cook. I'm a big fan of the Fogo Super Premium charcoal because it's some really big chunks and it's very similar to just throwing logs on the fire. So every couple of hours, I'll take one of these, throw them in there, let it light up, and it's pretty easy to maintain temperatures. Another great thing about cooking with charcoal instead of wood is that it burns super clean. And it'll stay that way for the first few hours of the cook, but once that fat starts to render and juices start to come out of that brisket, we'll see some really nice smoke coming out of there. And that's what gives direct heat all the good flavor. 4 hours later, let's see how this little brisket is looking. Ooh, got some serious color on there. Honestly, not as dark as I was expecting. Not used to seeing that. Feels really nice though. It's actually pretty tender. Got that nice crust on top from all that direct heat. But we're gonna flip this over, let this go for another few hours and we will check back in. Oh, let's see what old Cockburn's up to. Ooh, what are you up to, buddy?
Just giving this ChudBox Pro its final little rub down. We're sending her to a new home tomorrow morning, so just getting her all polished up, looking pretty. Ooh. Just finished blasting out this brand new 115, so she's all burnt out and
looking nice and shiny,
ready to go off as well. So
how are the pit builds going so far?
Good. We actually have a lot of people coming this week, which will be nice because we are running out of space in the shop. We got these new clean, beautiful 65-gallon rolled tubes, which is exciting. Lids for the mini ChudBox. Nice little stack. We got our work cut out for us. But you know, there is just one little problem I keep having every time I build one of these pits here.
Oh yeah, what's that?
There's always a damn snake in my boot.
4 hours later, 8 hours into this cook, this brisket is coming off the pit. We got some pretty good color on there. Got that nice, crunchy, direct heat bark on the underside. It's reading about 190 degrees internal temp, so I know it's fully cooked, but it doesn't feel quite tender. So we're gonna wrap it up, give it a long overnight rest, and that should soften up the bark, continue the cooking process, and we should end up with a delicioso brisket. As you can see, I'm going with a paper wrap on this brisket. Typically, I'm a fan of the foiled boat, but the whole point of the foiled boat is to get a really crunchy bark, and we've got that in spades on this thing. And the main benefit of a paper wrap is that it really softens your bark up, which is exactly what I'm looking for. And yes, I am going to tallow this brisket. I know that's a big hot trend right now, and I can confirm that the majority of big name barbecue joints in this city do in fact tallow their briskets, and that's for a few different reasons. First off, consistency. If you're cooking 110 briskets a day, you want them all coming out looking the same, and making sure they're all dripping wet with tallow is a great way to do that. Second, no one can complain about your brisket being dry if it's literally soaked in fat. Third, it's all about the looks, right? At a lot of these big name places, everyone's pulling their phone out and filming you cut everything, and if you're pulling out a big, dripping, juicy, glistening brisket, it's just gonna look that much better on camera. But does it actually affect the cook? Not as much as you may think, but a little extra fat in the wrap does help kind of comb through the outside, giving you that really nice, fatty, juicy glisten that a lot of people are after. So, I got some rendered beef tallow here. I'm just gonna pour this right over the top. A lot of places will do this halfway through the rest. They'll rewrap with it, but I'm just gonna do it right now. Pour it right on that crunchy bark on top, and we're just gonna wrap this up. And wrapping a brisket is super easy. Start with one fold, then we're gonna go this way, this side. Make sure everything's nice and tight. Flip it over, make sure it's really tight on the back end. Then we want to fold this flap in, and then perfectly wrapped brisket. Nice little package, easy to grab. From here onto this sheet tray, it goes into a 180-degree oven. And there it shall sit just like this for the next 12 to 15 hours or until I'm ready to slice it up. One overnight rest later, and this bad Larry is coming out of the oven. Smelling good. It's got that chocolatey, perfectly cooked brisket smell to it. Gotta pour on some of that extra tallow that ended up in the sheet pan. Yes, please. Great fire starter here. And there we have it, folks. Look at that bark. That looks pretty good, honestly. Darkened up a lot. Feels perfectly pliable. Let's see if it's got any jiggle to it. Oh, that's the dull sounds you want to hear when a brisket hits the cutting board. Yep, that's nice. Underside feeling nice and tender. A little more hard than usual, especially up in the lean area up here. As to be expected, it was blasted with direct heat for 8 hours. But yeah, it's got some good jiggle to it. Feeling good. I think it's time to slice on in. Ooh, ooh. Let's take this little tip off here, see how it's looking. Not much of a smoke ring, as to be expected. Oh my God. It's exactly what I expected it to taste like. It's kind of like a pork steak meets a brisket, but it's better than I was thinking. Definitely a little tough to get through that bottom. The underside of the lean got some crunch to it, but that's looking pretty good to me. Pull test? Yes, please. It's cooked properly. It's tender. Tasty. A bit dry. Oh man, but that flavor, fantastic. Let's see how the fatty side's looking. Looking good. Feeling nice and tender. I've seen worse briskets than that in my day. A real burn end. That looks pretty dang good to me. Ooh. Mm-hmm. That's just a little nugget of happiness right there. Ow. And there it is. The fatty brisket. Looking good. Pretty good looking slice of brisket right there. Nice and juicy, nice and tender. It's weird seeing a brisket without a smoke ring on it, but definitely cooked properly, definitely nice and tender.
Oh God. It's like a wet towel. It looks really beautiful.
The smell is unlike any other brisket.
It smells like a burger. It almost smells like a steak.
Ooh.
Like a fajita.
All right, Evan, honest opinion, direct heat brisket.
It's nice and tender. Real damn good. Look at the fat. My God.
Nice.
It's so beefy.
Not nearly as heavy, smoke-wise, obviously.
I just like how different it is.
Right.
Every brisket tastes the same except this one.
The lean came out a little dry for me.
It's not drier than everybody else's lean. Yeah. Fantastic. This is really good, man.
I did do a tallow wrap, though.
Oh, okay. You know, I hear that's Aaron Franklin's secret.
No, I hear that, too.
I'm curious about how crunchy it would be if you didn't wrap it.
Yeah.
You know, or if you even boated it. Like turn it over and then boated it.
Yeah, more experiments to come.
Wow. Oh. Surprise, surprise, it's really good.
Yeah, who'd have guessed? All right, y'all, and that is it. That is how to cook a direct heat brisket. I highly recommend giving this one a try. I've never tasted anything quite like that before. Is it better than a traditionally smoked brisket? No. It's hard to compare with that perfect texture and that tender gelatinous bite you get from a really low and slow. But like Evan said, it's different, and I think that's just as important. And it is still absolutely delicious. But that being said, if you do give this a try for yourself, be sure to tag me on Instagram at ChudsBBQ. I love to see what y'all are cooking. Big shout out to all the Patreon members. Thank you for supporting the channel and letting me do experiments like this. If you're not a member of the Patreon, consider joining. They're the first people to know when Chud chimneys and tortilla presses are going to be released, as well as behind the scenes and bonus content. Head over to ChudsBBQ.com to see prices and specs on all the pits I make. And until the next time I see you, please go cook something outside. Peace.